Three children walked to the beach. Only their footprints came home. Australia Day, 1966, Adelaide. Three kids, a bus stop, a summer morning so bright it hurt to look at. Jane was 9, Anna was 7, Grant was 4. Their mother handed them 8 shillings and 6pence, told them to be home by 2. They never came home. Not at 2, not at 3, not ever. Glenelg Beach swallowed them whole that day. No bodies, no blood, no screams that anyone heard. Just sand and sun, and a witness who saw a tall blonde man playing with 3 children near the water, and then nothing. 60 years, 6 decades. The longest cold case in Australian history. A grieving mother who waited by the phone until the day she died. A father who drank himself into a coffin chasing ghosts. A nation that searched every dune, every ditch, every dark corner, and found nothing but lies. But somebody knew. Somebody always knows. There's a man whose name keeps surfacing. A factory, a piece of concrete, a confession, whispered to a dying friend. What happened on that beach? Who took them? And why, after all these years, does the answer still sit just out of reach, mocking everyone who reaches for it? The Beaumont Children. The case Australia can't bury, because it never had bodies to put in the ground. Act 1. The Stain. A summer morning, a short walk. 3 children erased. January 26th, 1966. The heat was already wicked by 9 in the morning. Adelaide baked under a sky like blue tin. Nancy Beaumont stood at her kitchen window, watching her 3 kids line up for the bus. Jane in a pink swimsuit under her green dress. Anna trailing behind, freckled and small. Little Grant gripping his sister's hand, because that's what 4-year-olds do. They'd been to Glenelg Beach 100 times. 5 minutes by bus, a short walk to the sand. Lunch money in the pocket, home by 2. Nancy waved. The kids waved back. That was the last time she saw them alive. The beach was packed. 40,000 people. Australia Day crowds spread across the sand like ants on a sugar bowl. 3 kids should have been invisible in that sea of bodies. But somebody saw them. Somebody was watching the whole time. A postman who knew the family spotted them at 11, walking away from the beach. Alone, smiling. Anna laughing about something only she found funny. He waved. They waved back. He was the last person to see them alive. A baker remembered them too. Around noon, Jane walked into his shop, bought meat pies, paid with a £1 note. Nancy had only given them 8 shillings and 6pence. Somebody else gave them that pound. Somebody with money. Somebody they trusted enough to take it from. A young woman at the beach later told police what she saw. A tall man, mid-30s, slim, blonde hair swept back, tan skin, blue swim trunks. He was playing with the children, throwing them in the air, lying on a towel, watching them dress and undress like he had every right in the world to be there. The children laughed. They knew him, or thought they did. By 2 o'clock, Nancy was at the front window. By 3, she was pacing. By 5, her husband Jim came home from work, and her face told him everything before her mouth could. The police were called at 7:30 p.m. By midnight, every cop in Adelaide was sweeping the beach with flashlights and dogs. Nothing. Not a sandal, not a towel, not a thread. 3 children had walked into the most crowded beach in South Australia and walked out of existence, like the sand itself had opened up and taken them. The next morning, Nancy sat in the kitchen, staring at 3 empty chairs. The newspapers were already on her doorstep. Australia was already learning the names that would haunt it for 60 years. Jane, Anna, Grant. And the man on the beach, the blonde stranger, the ghost in blue trunks, who knew exactly what he was doing. Who was he? And how did he convince 3 careful children to follow him into the dark? Act 2. The Shadows. The biggest manhunt in Australian history finds nothing but ghosts. The search was massive. The search was useless. 300 police, 2,000 civilian volunteers. Every drain, every quarry, every patch of scrub within 50 miles got walked twice. Helicopters, tracker dogs, frogmen in the Gulf. They found nothing, not a scrap. In a country where you can't lose a wallet without somebody finding it, 3 children had vanished without leaving so much as a hair behind.
The witness composite went out to every newspaper in the country. The blonde man with the chiseled face, the tall stranger in blue trunks. Australia stared at that drawing for weeks. Nobody recognized him. Or, more likely, too many people recognized him, and none of them were right. Tips poured in. 40,000 tips. Every blonde man in Adelaide got a knock on the door. Mailmen, teachers, bank tellers. Nobody fit. The cops chased every shadow. Every one of them dissolved when they touched it. Then came the letters. November 1966. 10 months after the disappearance. Nancy received a letter at home. Childish handwriting, signed Jane. It said the children were safe. It said a man was caring for them. It said, "Don't tell the police." There was a second letter from the man himself, signed only the keeper. He instructed Jim and Nancy to come alone to a meeting place, to bring no money, just themselves. They went. They waited for hours. Nobody came. The letters were tested. The handwriting was analyzed. Decades later, advanced forensics proved them a hoax. Some sick teenager, some bored, cruel kid with nothing better to do than tear open a mother's wound and pour salt in. They never caught who wrote them. They never even tried hard. Then, 1968, a psychic named Gerard Croisset arrived from the Netherlands. Adelaide paid for his flight. Adelaide hung on his every word. He pointed at a warehouse, said the children were buried beneath the floor. The owner refused to dig. The public raised money to dig anyway. They tore up the concrete. They dug for days. Nothing. Not a bone, not a button. The psychic flew home. The Beaumonts went back to waiting by a phone that never rang. The case went cold, then colder. Then it froze. Suspects came and went. A pedophile named Bevan Spencer von Einem, convicted of murdering another Adelaide child in 1983, was looked at hard. Witnesses placed him at the beach. Witnesses placed him with kids who looked like the Beaumonts. Never enough to charge him with this. A pedophile named Arthur Brown, a sailor on shore leave, a businessman with a beach house. Names. Just names. None of them stuck. Decades later, one name would rise above all the others, and the police had ignored him from the very first week. The man with the factory, the man with the warehouse, the man whose own children would one day point at his concrete floor and say, "Dig." Act 3. The Deviant. A factory owner with a smile, a temper, and a concrete floor. His name was Harry Phipps. Wealthy, charming, tall, blonde, mid-30s in 1966. Owned a factory in North Plimpton, barely a mile from Glenelg Beach. He matched the witness sketch. He matched the description. He matched everything. And nobody questioned him for 47 years. Phipps was a man with two faces. Outside his front door, he was a respected businessman. Bow ties and charity dinners and handshakes that lingered too long. Behind that door, he was a monster. His own son, Hayden, would later tell investigators what life was like inside that house. The beatings, the screaming, the cross-dressing, the cruelty that ran through the family like rot through old wood. Phipps kept large amounts of cash on hand, £1 notes, the kind a baker remembered Jane Beaumont using to buy pies that day. His factory was a 5-minute walk from Glenelg. His son Hayden told police something else. The day after the children vanished, he saw his father digging in the backyard with a fresh hole and a wheelbarrow full of dirt. Hayden was 8 years old. He never forgot. He spent the next 4 decades trying to make himself forget. He drank, he used, he buried it. But the hole in the backyard kept opening up in his dreams. When he finally came forward in 2007, after his father was already dead, the police listened. Sort of. They scanned the factory grounds, ground-penetrating radar. They found anomalies. They dug. Bones. But animal bones. Old. Worthless. They dug again in 2013. Nothing. They dug again in 2018. Nothing. And Phipps sat in his grave, laughing. But the picture was getting clearer. Phipps had been at Glenelg Beach that day. A witness, decades later, confirmed it. 2 men in suits had visited his factory the morning after the children vanished, carrying something heavy, something wrapped. His own son said his father was a sadistic predator who liked young children. Said he watched him hurt kids. Said the family knew.
Said the family stayed silent. Phipps had the means, the motive, the geography, the money, the face. And Adelaide police had walked past his factory 1,000 times in 1966 without ever knocking. How? How does a man fitting the description perfectly, living a mile from the crime scene, get ignored? Because he was rich. Because he was connected. Because in 1966 Australia, men like Harry Phipps didn't get questioned by men in cheap suits with notepads. He died in 2004, wealthy, free, untouched, buried with his secrets and his concrete and his £1 notes. The Beaumonts had spent 38 years waiting for justice, and the man who probably took their children spent those same 38 years sleeping in a soft bed. Act 4. The Trap. A trap that never sprung, a truth that arrived too late. By the time anyone listened to Hayden Phipps, his father had been in the ground for 3 years. There would be no arrest, no mask off, no handcuffs clicking shut on tanned blonde wrists. This is a noir story
without a noir ending. The trap was set 40 years too late. In 2013, retired detectives Bill Hayes and Mostyn Matters built the Phipps case from the ground up. Witnesses, geography, motive, means. They begged South Australia police to take it seriously. The dig at the new Castelloy factory was the closest Australia ever got to closing this case. Ground-penetrating radar lit up 3 anomalies under the concrete floor. 3. The exact number nobody wanted to think about. Police brought excavators, forensic anthropologists, cameras. The Beaumont family, what was left of them, held their breath in homes across the country. They broke through the concrete on a cold morning in November 2013. They dug and dug and dug. Nothing. Soil disturbance, old construction debris, a buried pipe. In 2018, they tried again. Different spot, same factory, same hopes, same nothing. Either the bodies were never there, or they had been moved decades ago, when Phipps still had the strength and the secrets and the trucks. The trap that should have closed in 1966 closed on empty air in 2018. DNA technology that solved the Golden State Killer. Genealogy databases that cracked cases 30 years cold. None of it could help, because there was nothing to test. No blood, no bones, no evidence beyond a witness sketch and a son's nightmares. Australia got close. Australia got so close. But Harry Phipps died a free man. He was cremated, his ashes scattered. Even his bones were taken from us. The system that protected him in 1966 protected him in death. His son Hayden died in 2014. Heart attack. He never saw a verdict. He carried his father's evil to his own grave. The witnesses are dying. The detectives are retiring. The factory was eventually demolished. The concrete that may have hidden 3 small bodies for half a century, pulverized, carted away, spread on roads across South Australia. Drive on the right highway in Adelaide today, and you might be driving on the answer. The Beaumont Children's killer was never charged, never named officially, never fingerprinted, never photographed in cuffs. The mask never came off, because the man behind it had the courtesy to die before anyone had the courage to reach for it. 3 children, 60 years, and a single private detective named Stuart Mullins who refuses to let it go. He's still digging, still asking, still chasing the ghost of a tall blonde man in blue trunks who walked off a beach with 3 smiling kids and walked back alone. Mullins is in his 60s now. Time is the killer's last accomplice. Act 5. The Void. A mother's vigil, a father's bottle, a nation's open wound. Nancy Beaumont never moved, never changed the phone number, never threw away the toys. For 53 years, she sat in that house waiting for her children to walk through the door. She kept their bedrooms exactly as they left them on January 25th, 1966. Pink curtains, stuffed bears, a small bed Grant would never grow out of. Friends begged her to move, to start over, to let go. How do you let go of 3 children when you don't even have a grave to stand at? Jim Beaumont, the father, drank, then drank harder. He left Nancy in the 1990s, couldn't bear it anymore, couldn't bear her. The grief had turned them into strangers haunting the same hallway. He died in 2017, 92 years old, still hoping, still waiting, still wrong. Nancy followed in 2019.
She died not knowing. She died with 3 children in her head who would always be 9 and 7 and 4.
Australia lost more than 3 kids on that beach. It lost something it can't get back. Before the Beaumonts, kids walked to school alone, rode bicycles to the corner store, caught buses to beaches with 8 shillings in their pockets. After the Beaumonts, that world ended. The doors got locked. The hands got held. The childhood every Australian remembered before 1966 disappeared with Jane and Arna and Grant. A whole generation of kids grew up under Nancy Beaumont's shadow without ever knowing her name. And the man who did it lived, aged, made money, had grandchildren, sat at Christmas dinners, watched the news cycles wash over the case again and again, and smiled into his teacup. Evil isn't always punished. Evil sometimes gets a long, comfortable life and a peaceful death. The detectives still working the case know the truth now. Most of them name Phipps in private. None of them can name him in court. Without bodies, there is no charge. Without confession, there is no closure. Without a living killer, there is no justice. Only a name whispered in retirement homes by old cops who can't sleep. The Beaumont case sits in a filing cabinet in Adelaide. Boxes of statements, stacks of dead leads. A photograph of 3 children in summer clothes, frozen in 1966. They will never get older. They will never come home. And the beach where they vanished is still there, still busy, still bright. Kids still play in the surf where Jane and Arna and Grant played their last game. The sand remembers nothing. The sea forgives everything. And the truth lies somewhere under a road in Adelaide, ground to dust, driven over 1,000,000 times by people who never knew it was there. Epilogue. What the beach took, what the silence kept. 3 children walked to a beach on a summer morning. The wind was warm, the sand was hot. The sky was the kind of blue that makes you believe nothing bad can happen on a day this beautiful. They were wrong. Jane Beaumont would have been 68 today. Arna would have been 66. Grant would have been 63. They would have had children, grandchildren, wrinkles and gray hair and Sunday roasts and ordinary, beautiful, boring lives. Instead, they have a Wikipedia page, a police file, a legend. Australia learned a lesson on January 26, 1966. The lesson was this: your children are never as safe as you think they are. The world is not the place you believed it to be. And monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like a tall, blonde man in blue trunks, smiling on a beach, throwing a child in the air. The Beaumonts taught a country to be afraid. The price of that lesson was 3 small lives nobody ever recovered. The beach is still there. The footprints are gone. And somewhere, the truth waits in the dark, patient, quiet, and utterly indifferent to who needs it. Some cases close. Some cases don't. This one never